Bem-vindo a todos e todas. A gente vai dar essas boas-vindas algumas vezes, porque o pessoal está entrando em ondas. Bem-vindo, Michel, todo mundo aí, associados, quem ainda não é associado com a gente. Daqui a pouquinho a gente começa. Legal, bom dia, Rita, legal, o Instituto Ethos está aqui. Quem quiser ir se apresentando no chat também, gente, fica à vontade, dizer seu nome, dizer de onde é não só a organização, mas também de que parte do país. Paul, while we're starting, I have to ask, De Gregorio, is it like a Latin name, Portuguese, Spanish, something like that?
Yeah, my father was born in a place near Naples in southern Italy.
Oh, I see, Italian, yeah.
So very excited that Napoli won the football for the first time in 33 years, but very conscious not to mention Diego Maradona on this call.
Nice. Pessoal, obviamente, né, a nossa fala vai ser em português. Na hora da gente conversar com o Paul, ele vai falar em inglês, mas aí eu vou fazer a tradução, tá bom? Então, não se preocupem com isso. E a parte da palestra que a gente vai passar está devidamente legendada. Mas vou esperar mais 2 minutinhos para a gente começar mesmo aqui, oficialmente. Muito legal, todo mundo que está se apresentando. Olá, Júlia, Pequeno Príncipe, Instituto Moreira de Souza, Vanessa, bom dia, lá de Fortaleza, Curitiba, Rio de Janeiro, muito legal, Salvador, Embu das Artes, Acorde, muito legal, Instituto AW, muito legal, daqui de São Paulo, joia. Acho que mais 2 minutinhos e a gente começa, né? Muito legal. Ipatinga, Minas Gerais, SES de Campinas. Muito legal, vários hospitais. Foz do Iguaçu. We're greeting people from all over Brazil, so it's nice. Have you ever been to Brazil, Paul?
I would love to come. Thank you for inviting me.
Next festival.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I really, South America is absolutely a place that I would love to come.
Nice. Para conhecimento de todos também, né? A gente vai gravar, tá transmitindo no YouTube, que daí assim já fica registrado lá depois. Sim, Rita, essa reunião vai ser gravada sim, tá bom? Mas é legal que vai dar para você participar pelo menos do começo.
Obrigada.
Acho que podemos ir começando, né? Mariana, G. Paul, we can start. Já temos um público muito legal, então agora sim, gente. Bom dia a todos e a todas. Meu nome é Fernando Nogueira, eu sou diretor executivo da ABCR. Estou muito contente da gente estar aqui hoje retomando a série de Cafés ABCR, que são reuniões virtuais, quer dizer, virtuais nos últimos tempos, né? Que a gente junta não só associados, mas também a comunidade mais geral, de organizações da sociedade civil, ativistas, lideranças, e muito contente também, um café muito especial dessa vez que a gente está fazendo em parceria com a Resource Aliance, mas eu vou deixar a Mariana daqui a pouquinho falar da Resource Aliance, explicar para a gente, também dar as boas-vindas, tá? Então, a ABCR, a Associação Brasileira de Captadores de Recursos, para quem ainda não conhece, né, a gente reúne captadores, associados, né, profissionais, pessoas físicas e também organizações que se preocupam com sustentabilidade, mobilização de recursos, fortalecimento, desenvolvimento institucional das organizações e da sociedade civil. Enfim, então a gente faz uma série de iniciativas para trocar experiências, compartilhar conhecimento, contribuir para a formação, então, dos profissionais e capacitação das organizações. Em breve a gente estará com o nosso Festival ABCR, agora 3 e 4 de julho. Quem ainda não, né, pegou o seu ingresso, ainda dá tempo, vai ter muita coisa legal nesse festival. Então, a gente está aqui hoje com o Paul de Gregorio, vai apresentar daqui a pouquinho. Só um momento, gente. Giovana, gente, tem algumas pessoas com o microfone aberto. Giovana, você consegue mutar se precisa, tá bom? A Giovana, da nossa equipe aqui da ABCR, que está como anfitriã hoje. E obrigado por toda a ajuda também, Giovana. Então, agora, sem mais delongas, eu queria passar para a Mariana, falar um pouco da Resource Aliance. É uma parceira antiga da ABCR, e a gente fica muito contente de estar renovando, estar fazendo atividades novas com a Resource Aliance, começando hoje pelo café, mas quem sabe ver mais coisa legal aí pela frente. Mariana.
Bom dia, Fernando. Bom dia, Paul. Bom dia, todo mundo, participantes desse webinar. Estou super feliz de organizar esse webinar em parceria com a Resource Aliance. Há muito tempo a gente quer fazer mais um evento com a ABCR, enfim. Eu sou do Advisory Panel da Resource Aliance hoje em dia, e desde que eu era a embaixadora da Resource Aliance no Brasil, eu venho conversando com o JP e agora com o Fernando sobre atividades de trocas de conteúdo, de fortalecimento das organizações, de conteúdo para as pessoas, enfim. Faz muito tempo que a gente tem essas conversas, a gente já organizou outros eventos em parceria, e aí agora, esse ano, a gente conseguiu fazer esse webinar ao vivo, que eu estou super feliz que está acontecendo. Estamos conversando de outros conteúdos e outros eventos que a gente possa fazer em parceria com a ABCR também. Então, é só o começo de muita coisa que tem por aí. Obrigada, Fernando, pela parceria, por essa construção, e espero que todo mundo curta. Eu sou uma grande fã do Paul. Paul, I am a big fan of yours. I've told you already. But anyway. Sou uma grande fã do Paul e tenho certeza que vocês vão gostar desse conteúdo.
Então, gente, relembrando, daqui a pouquinho a gente vai pedir para o Paul se apresentar logo após o vídeo, mas só contextualizando um pouco, né? Essa é uma palestra que ele fez num evento da Resource Aliance alguns meses atrás. Foi uma plenária de fechamento de um evento que a Resource Aliance fez, então vocês vão ver que ele vai mencionar, né? Espero que vocês tenham aproveitado os dias do evento. O Paul é de uma agência de comunicação, né? Lidera uma agência de comunicação, a Rally, sorry, don't know how to pronounce it, mas enfim, vai aparecer algumas vezes na legenda, e vocês vão, então, a gente vai ter o começo, né, com a apresentação do vídeo. Quem quiser já ir, vai anotando as perguntas, quiser até, quem sabe, já ir colocando no chat, pode ser em português, não se preocupem. Logo depois, a gente vai abrir, então a gente vai ter uns 30, 40 minutos também de conversa com o Paul, logo após o vídeo, e aí nesse momento eu vou fazer a tradução consecutiva, tá bom? Então, muito contente da gente estar com esse público tão legal aqui. Vou começar então a compartilhar o vídeo. Por favor, né, peço para todo mundo tomar realmente cuidado aí com os seus áudios, para todo mundo poder enxergar bem, tá bom? Vocês já devem estar conseguindo ver o vídeo, certo?
Certo.
Legal.
Sim.
E também testei o som, imagino que esteja tudo certo. Vou dar o play, se vocês estão ouvindo bem, só dá um joinha para quem está aí com a câmera aberta. A partir de agora, vamos passar, é um vídeo de uns 30, 40 minutos, logo depois voltamos a conversar. Ótimo palestra para todo mundo.
Hi, everyone. thank you so much for coming along today. I hope you had a brilliant, inspiring and thought-provoking 2 days of FRO 2023. I'm really honoured to have been asked to close your conference today. And just as thinking about it, as we go through the session, if you have any questions, please add them to chat and I'll answer them as we go through. So today's session is called Digital Mobilization, Harnessing People Power to Engage the Public at Scale and Win. But really, it's a moment for me to talk to you all about my obsession with mobilization. So my goal today is to do 3 things. 1, explain why I think the mobilization model is a model worth exploring for charities and campaign groups all around the world. 2, show you what the model looks like in action. And 3, leave you with some key points to think about as you consider if your organization could adopt the mobilization model. I've got to start with this kind of fundamental belief that I'm sure I share with most of the people on this call today. And that's the fundamental belief that people have power and that unlocking it is key to creating change in the world. Change happens, maybe only happens, when passionate people form groups and organize themselves around an issue and seek to use their power to change that issue. Humans are incredible. We are capable of great things, but maybe sometimes we don't always realize what power we have. So we see our role in the charity campaign group ecosystem to promote approaches that look to prove to people that they have power by finding ways to give them the confidence, the skills, resources, so that they can unlock that power and use it to bring about the change that they believe in. Now, obviously, people power is not anything new. The sector we all work in is firmly rooted in the principles of people power, activism, and movement building. And let's face it, there's a lot that we need to change in the world. There's a lot going on that we need to campaign for. LGBTQ+ rights have come a long way in all of our lifetimes, but we still see a lot of hate, a lot of acts of violence being directed at the LGBTQ+ community, and we still see some countries persecute LGBTQ+ people through unjust laws. Just a week before I presented a version of this session at IFC in Holland last year, 2 people were shot dead outside a gay bar in Bratislava, Slovakia. It really was a timely reminder that today in 2023, Pride still needs to be an act of protest as well as a moment of celebration. We think about Greta Thunberg, and Greta Thunberg inspired the world with her school strike for climate. She very clearly and very passionately made the point that the climate emergency is real. And she and other young climate activists like her have inspired young people and older people to take action to raise the issues of the climate disaster we all face and to campaign for change. So Greta was not the catalyst for the climate movement, but her and other young activists like her have been central in raising the profile of the movement and demanding that companies, politicians, and we, the public, take action to avoid crisis. And since the murder of George Floyd in the USA, the Black Lives Matter movement has swelled in numbers and become a global phenomenon that has injected new energy into the fight for racial justice, as well as opening the eyes of white people the world over to the unjust society that we live in. And in countries all over the planet today in 2023, women have to campaign and fight for their reproductive rights. In Iran right now, women are literally fighting for their rights. In Afghanistan, women and girls are fighting for their right to an education. And all over the world, women are campaigning in solidarity with women in other countries to ensure they've got access to their basic rights. Which brings me to some definitions connected to people power. And I want to start with activism, the use of direct and noticeable action to achieve a result, usually a political or social one. I'd argue that everything we are trying to achieve as a sector could be labelled as political, but obviously political with a small p and not party political. And I'd suggest most of what we are doing has some element of social change attached to it. So we're all engaged in activism. The people that do activism are activists, a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change. That to me sounds like all of you. So we're all activists. Are we all activists? I think we are. I mean, you may not call yourself an activist, you might call yourself a fundraiser or campaigner or something else. But I see a Zoom call full of activists engaged in the fight for a fairer, greener, healthier and more equal world. And let's face it, from a fundraising perspective, giving can be an act of support, but also an act of rebellion or an act of solidarity. And movements are a really hot topic in our sector right now. And when you look at the dictionary definition, it's no surprise that we're all obsessed with movements. So movements are groups of people working together to advance their shared political, social, or artistic ideas. I think we should all be a little wary of the idea that an individual charity or organisation can start its own movement or own a movement. I don't think you can, but what I think we can do is really learn from them. What we should be doing is establishing where our organisations sit in movements that already exists, and figure out how we can demonstrate movement generosity and make the movement stronger, and how then, with respect, you can harness the power and energy of the movements that already exist to help you achieve your goal. What we should never ever do, in my opinion, is think that we can put our logo on a movement and call it our own. That's not a movement, that's marketing. There's nothing wrong with marketing, but it's not movement building. As I mentioned earlier on, people power is not new. Our sector has always been rooted in people power. And we should always remember the origin stories of the organisations that we work for, and how the organisations we work for, how they were originally formed. At the very beginning, it's likely to have been formed by a group of people organising themselves around a problem in the attempt to fix it. It connected people who cared about that problem and then gave them a variety of ways to help create the change that was needed to fix that problem, or at least improve the kind of people or public's experience of the issue. If you tell your organisation's story, your organisation's origin story, to a friend or a supporter, you will very likely be telling the story of a group of people who work together to advance their shared, small p, political, social or artistic ideas, which, as we've just seen, is the very definition of a movement. Now, I don't want to upset anyone, that's not what I'm here to do, but a key principle that I think we should all acknowledge is that fundraising alone won't change the world. I'm not saying that to be controversial or to suggest that fundraising isn't a massively important profession. I'm saying it because I passionately believe that the public, individual citizens, can play a much bigger role in your organisation's vision than simply funding it. In fact, we believe at Rally that inspiring people to share their time, their money and voice is a route to you achieving your goals and vision more quickly and more efficiently. And that the organisations that only seek to extract money from the public are missing out on the potential of people have power to drive them towards success. Which finally brings us to the concept of mobilisation. We frame what we do, how we work and how we think under the label of mobilisation, to the definition on screen: the action of organising and encouraging groups of people to take collective action in pursuit of a particular objective. We do this because it accurately sums up the approaches to public engagement that charities and campaign groups, in our opinion, should be taking. The mobilisation models that we advocate integrate fundraising, communications, brand activation, campaigning and advocacy offers, and create opportunities for the public to engage at a level that suits their own circumstances and the energy they have at the time that we reach them. So this is not an approach that's about campaigning over fundraising or fundraising over anything else. It's about realising that people can support an organisation in a variety of different ways, and realising the real power that lies in acknowledging and building off of that. So to be explicitly clear, the goal of mobilisation is to inspire active participation in the mission, the vision and the goals of your organisation. And to be really, really, really clear, we are talking about actions that cover the full spectrum of time, money and voice or amplification actions. We are not talking about separate digital fundraising strategies or digital communication strategies or digital campaigning strategies. We are talking about a model which is at the intersection of all of those internal functions, which we recognise is a difficult place to be at many charities, but it is a place where we know amazing things can happen. A mobilisation approach is born out of the integration of all public-facing communications from all teams, where no one team is dominant and where no one team owns a set of supporters. It's a communications approach which is based on the answer to a very, very simple question, which is, what is the best thing the public could do with us today to support our vision? We're talking about a model that inspires the public to give you a share of their time, money, and voice. Yes, because you asked, but more importantly, because they share that vision. What you do is a reflection of who they are and what they want the society that they live in to be. So they want to take action with you and not for you. So we're huge advocates of promoting mission and values over products as we seek to attract support from the public. It can sometimes feel that charities have stopped putting their values and mission up front when engaging with the public. Instead, we've lent into the kind of capitalism and the approach that we need to focus on the products that we want people to buy. So the monthly donation, the campaign action, or the event registration, and not necessarily what we want to achieve or what the impact of the public support will be. We're also huge advocates of values-based attraction strategies. An attraction strategy is where we use our values as a magnet to attract everyone who shares them. We bring them close by communicating our values, and then we find the most appropriate thing for them to do as we communicate with them over time. Again, could be money, could be time, or could be voice or amplification of our messaging. And we think language matters. So the reason why we frame what we do as attraction over acquisition is because when we look at the definitions of the language that we use, and we think that language helps set organizational tone and culture and influences how people think and operate. If we look at the definition of acquisition, we're talking about the buying or obtaining of assets or objects. Buying or obtaining assets or objects, these are strange terms to be using when we're talking about people. We prefer to use the word attraction. Attraction is the action or power of evoking interest in or liking for someone or something. So you might think that this is just semantics in terms of language. So I suppose the really simple thing to do is ask yourself if you would rather be acquired or if you would rather be attracted to a cause or to an issue. A moment ago, I used the phrase, use your values as a magnet. Now, let's face it, that sounds like something that a person like me at a conference would say. So I really want to take some time to really bring that alive and show you what I mean. And the very best way to show you what using your values as a magnet looks like is to show you this version of the Bernie Sanders homepage in 2016. For those of you that don't know Bernie was running against Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination to face Trump in the 2016 election. It's a brilliant homepage. It has mobilization and active participation at its core. And I wish all charity websites would put this much focus on converting their web visitors to action like this one does. You can donate over on the left-hand side. You can continue to the main site on the right-hand side. But the real hero on this page is that headline copy. Nobody who works 40 hours a week should be living in poverty. It's a really simple statement. It's a statement that sums up the values of the campaign, and in this case, the candidate. It's bold. As I say, it's really simple. And it's something to agree with. The language is great. You are not being asked to submit or sign up. You're being encouraged to agree. It really is a masterclass in driving a response based on values. Say something, ask people to agree. So if you land on this website, if you land on this web page, it's because you've investigated Bernie, you've seen him on the telly, you've read something in the newspaper, you've followed an ad. You land on this website and you're faced with that wonderful statement which articulates his values and you agree, you're very likely to hit this button and share your contact details with the campaign. And you're very likely to go on to actively participate on delivering on those values which you clearly share with the campaign and, in this case, candidate. How you speak really, really matters. I could talk for hours and hours about this. I have minutes. But most organizations speak like this. They center themselves, they put themselves between the problem and the solution. We, the organization, are going to change the world. Take this action to help us do it. You give something to the organization so they can go off and do the important work without you. We call this vertical framing. But we think to effectively mobilize, you need to create the big us. We think you need to adopt a more horizontal framing. You need to frame the reader as part of the solution, not just a provider of resources, but someone who is central to the problem being solved. So in terms of horizontal framing, you would write something like, we can only solve this problem working together, and here's how you can have impact. Scale is a really important concept for mobilization. We don't want to be operating at the margins. We want to elevate vision, mission, and the plan for success to as many people who care about what we stand for as possible, because they stand for it as well. We want to inspire the volume of people required to bring around the change that is needed. We want to bring in new people. We want to convert those new people to action. So we think part of our focus should be on target actions. The target actions we want to inspire just as much or maybe a little bit more than the focus that we put on target audiences. Now, before I lose everyone in the room, let me just say I'm not an idiot. I do understand how important effective targeting is. And I do know that we need to have a sense of who the audience for our offers is before we start communicating them. However, I also think that as a sector, we love complexity. I think we can overthink this stuff and we sometimes end up with very, very complicated personas of what we deem to be the perfect supporter. Complicated personas that can't be replicated in digital channels. And then we can't replicate those personas in the digital channels. And then we kind of apply micro segmentation that doesn't really drive us towards scale. Might drive marketing efficiency in terms of returns on ad spend, but won't drive you towards the scale that you need to win on your issue. So we use this model, the spectrum of allies. It's a really useful way to think about scale and audience, and it's, I'm not going to lie, it's my current obsession. I love it. It's really, really, really simple. Now, the original model, spectrum of allies, wasn't designed with scale or audience in mind. It was designed by activists as a tool to establish where to focus their attention by naming and mapping the people and organizations that appear in each of the segments of the model for their particular issue. So active opposition, passive opposition, those people are neutral, passive allies, and active allies. And then activists would make a plan to move people one segment to the left. I mean, moving people from the right to the left is really something that I can get behind, and I would encourage you all to get involved in, but I was told not to be political. Love this model as it really clearly shows the positions that people can take on your issue, your vision, or your goal. And as campaigners and agents of change, we put a lot of time and energy in thinking about active allies and thinking about our active opponents, the people who love what you do and those people who are actively against what you do. And in reality, it's likely that the two most active groups are much smaller than this model suggests they are. Twitter might make them feel bigger, but we all know that Twitter isn't real life. What I love about this model is that it shows that most people sit in the middle, a much, much bigger wedge. So mass is in the middle. scale sits at the core of this model. It's where most people sit, and this is who we need to inspire and move people towards participation. Our jobs are to find the ways to inspire and communicate with those people who have a neutral view on an issue, or those passive allies who are aware of it but not taking actions, to take actions. And those actions can be a focus of the share of supporters' time, money and voice. So it's here that we can focus on a target action, as no audience profile is likely to help you find the people that sit at the core of these models. A recent example for this is Stonewall in the UK, an organisation that campaigns for LGBTA+ rights, and a rally client. To attract people who had not taken action with Stonewall before, they ran a campaign that led on trans rights. They led with the clear human rights angle, and the headline for the action reads, "Trans rights are human rights, and right now they are under attack." They had a very clear target action: join the official record of support for the trans community, add your name. This campaign saw them attract over 30,000 new email subscribers, and they raised more money at the point of sign up before the first email was ever sent than money they had actually spent on advertising in Facebook. And the targeting was very broad. We reached 700,000 people with this campaign because we believed in the power of the action over any kind of audience segmentation. So with the model, we shift opinion by moving people to the left. That's progress. We mobilize people from moving them from being a passive ally to an active one. And we drive scale support by moving the mass in the middle towards those more active signals of support. And we deliver real impact via mobilization when we have scale. And the scale of your opportunity is in part related to how your population maps to this simple model. I wanted to talk you through an example to bring mobilization thinking to life. I'm going to talk to you about Refuge, who are a rally client. Refuge are a UK-based domestic abuse charity. They run the National Domestic Abuse Helpline here in the UK, and they provide safe refuges for women to escape their abusive partners. They're an organisation that used to rely very heavily on national and local government funding to deliver their services. 80% of their funding came from those state-funded sources before we started working with them. They're an organisation that wanted to be more vocal and more challenging on the causes of domestic abuse and the laws that needed changing to protect survivors. So they approached us with this brilliant brief for challenge, which was, how do we as Refuge harness the power and energy of the feminist movement? And we were hired to help deliver on that brief. So we worked with them, we set a vision for what we wanted to achieve and kind of how we were going to achieve it. And we created a framework, which is on screen now, which was kind of set up to help them radically improve their digital performance and embed the digital mobilization model within the organization. The high level vision was set, and we also set these 4 pillars to support that vision. So we had work to do around messages and values. We had work to do around how we would attract and grow the size of our community. We had work to do about how we would increase the actions taken by the community that we could attract. And self-sufficiency was our long-term goal. So right at the beginning, we had a whole pillar dedicated to how we could set ourselves up for future success. There's no big reveal. I'm showing you this example because it did very well. In the first year before our project, Refuge raised around about £300,000 online. In the first full year after we had delivered the framework, they raised £700,000 online. And in the second full year, they raised 5.2 million. That year was the first year of COVID and the UK-wide lockdown. So clearly we saw an increase in digital income due to lockdown and the pandemic, but it really was the work that Refuge did before that, which prepared them and enabled them to maximise fundraising when domestic abuse was near the top of the news cycle. In terms of scale, fundraising growth, kind of mobilization growth, I think this is the most transformational project that I've ever been involved with. We did many, many things to bring around that kind of radical change in performance. One of the key things we did was to define what we call our movement story. So we ran a project that delivered a really compelling, inspirational, and very simple articulation of who Refuge are, what the scale of the problem they are trying to solve is, who or what the blocks to progress were, and how Refuge planned to overcome those blocks, and critically, what role the public could play in achieving that goal alongside us. So a movement story brings real clarity and consistency into how this story gets told to the public in order to attract their support. We also worked on the Refuge tone of voice, so we could give really clear guidance to anyone creating public-facing communications on how we should sound. And we focused our voice on these key attributes. So expert, we know what we're talking about. Active and action-focused, we speak to elicit a response, so we make it clear what the reader can do and why it matters. We're passionate and uncompromising. We ask difficult questions when needed, and we demand action when required. We're not afraid of showing emotion, but we will not be irrational or aggressive. We're grassroots and authentic. We're on the front line. We hear stories from thousands of women every year. We make sure those stories are heard, respected, and acted upon. We are human and accessible. We speak like human beings. We reject jargon. We aim for simple, clear, and easy to understand language at all times. And we're determined. We expect setbacks. We will deal with them, but we will never give up because lives are at stake. These attributes and this very simple guide have dramatically changed how we speak and how we write and how we seek to elicit response. And at the same time, we refreshed the visual identity to match our new tone of voice. In the first 18 months of activity, we saw huge growth in the size of the email file. When we started, we had 4,000 people on the email list. And in that first 18 months, we grew it to close to just over 100,000. It's bigger now. We're growing the list every month. We're currently at or just over 200,000 people on our email list, which is from 2019, 4,000 people to around about now, close to or just over 200,000 people. A lot of that growth came in Facebook. We'd run ads like this, connected to International Women's Day. We lay out the problem. 1.6 million women in the UK experience domestic abuse, and we offer a simple, values-led action. Sign up to the position that no woman should live in fear. Ads lead to web pages like this, which are absolutely focused on response and created by a wonderful partner that Refuge and Rally work with called Forward Action, who you should definitely look up. And we ask readers to add their name and stand with women experiencing domestic abuse. And here's the important bit. Because we're integrating kind of comms, campaigning, fundraising, all of these actions together, every single person who takes that first action are immediately asked to take another action. And in this case, that secondary action is support the National Domestic Abuse Helpline by giving a donation. There is a school of thought, which I run into a lot, that we should wait an unspecified amount of time before asking people who've taken action and signed up for emails for a donation. I completely reject this idea that we need to wait. Asking someone to do something impactful at the point they've just shown you that they care about your issue works, and the data supports this point of view. For Refuge, when we were running that initial burst of activity, for every £1 that we spent on Facebook ads, Refuge made £2 back before the first email was sent to a new subscriber. They focused on their and the public's values. They made it easy to show support, and they asked for a bigger action straight away. And they've now got an always on, always improving approach to scaling their email list. We radically overhauled their approach to email. At a high level, what do I mean by that? We basically killed the newsletter approach, and we make no apology for it. So emails a very long time ago from Refuge used to look like this. They were run quarterly. They were really difficult projects to be working on. There was a huge amount of content that needed to be collected, lots and lots of links, too many links, lots of images, more links, more images, too much. It's just far too much going on in terms of the communications that we were sending. The communication had no focus, was getting really low response, and was really, really difficult to produce. And we've moved to this approach. We send emails weekly as a minimum. Each email focuses on one thing and one thing only. It asks for one thing and one thing only. And we vary the content. So we're sending a mixture of high bar asks. So give money, campaign, take like high intensity action, to lower bar asks, maybe where we're asking people to share our content or amplify our services. And one thing that I'm extremely proud of the team at Refuge in terms of what they've achieved is that they've really shown how to successfully, with no drama, integrate fundraising and campaigning together. And they showed the real power of the kind of email list to help Refuge change laws and create better conditions for women in the UK. The example I'd like to show you is the first campaign that Refuge ran under this new umbrella approach of mobilisation. It was called The Naked Threat. It was a call on the government to make it illegal for someone to threaten to share an intimate image without consent. We asked our supporters and the general public to send an email to the government calling on them to adopt our policy position. We emailed our existing email list and we used Facebook to reach new audiences. Winning was a priority, changing the law was a priority, but extraordinary levels of collaboration between teams at Refuge and really great use of technology created a movement, a moment of scale and also of revenue generation. So the focus was to inspire people to email the Home Secretary, but we kept this donation ask in the user experience. And again, there's no big reveal. It raised £45,000 from new and existing supporters who took the action. So with an amazing amount of behind the scenes influencing from the Refuge policy team, and by bringing people power into play, Refuge delivered a win. The law was changed. 45,000 people took the action that I've shown you today. 13,000 of them were brand new to the email list, and that amazing fundraising return of £45,000. So we proved that integration across fundraising campaigning really could work for us and our model. And a really critical part of the approach is the ability to respond to news events in real time. So we're constantly looking at the news cycle to see if there are real world events that we can respond to and create a mobilisation moment around. One example of this is last year's fight to replace Boris Johnson as the UK Prime Minister and leader of the UK Conservative Party. Two people on screen, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, spent the whole of summer 2022 fighting each other for that job. We wanted to plan a mobilisation moment to be launched as soon as it was made public on who had won and who was going to become the new Prime Minister. We didn't know who would win, so we planned and we prepared for both. Liz Truss won. She became our Prime Minister. By planning for both eventualities, we could launch our action as soon as that announcement was made. Because we were ready, we could go live within 20 minutes of Liz Truss being announced as leader, with an action that was an open letter to the new Prime Minister, laying out our expectations that they would prioritise tackling violence against women and girls. We sent a full list email and we put ads live asking people to sign our letter to the new Prime Minister. And as you would expect, because I've shown you a couple of times now, we kept that donation ask in as we knew that it worked. You may know that Liz Truss, God bless her, lasted less than 50 days as Prime Minister of the UK, and that Rishi Sunak replaced her as leader of the Tory party and Prime Minister. So thanks to the cut and paste function on our laptops, we could respond immediately. We updated the action, we sent another full list email, and we showed our supporters and the public that we are really focused on our mission and could adapt our course at pace to respond to news. So Refuge now have a model that drives scale. It's always on. It's not moment or campaign based. We're always looking to grow our scale and grow our impact. We're sending a full list email every week. This week, we will have sent an email to just over 200,000 people. And comms planning is in part driven by a response to this question. What is the most impactful thing our supporters can do with us today? Again, not for us, but with us. I really think that Refuge is a great example of the approach, of the mobilization approach, which is in real simple terms can be described as amazing collaboration between teams at Refuge and an issue-focused approach to communications planning. So we're coming to the end of our time together this afternoon. I've got 7 key takeaways for you to think about, things for you to think about as you leave the session, hopefully things that you can carry into work tomorrow and in the coming weeks. So number 1, you don't have to be a campaigning organisation. Now I get asked all the time, Paul, we're not Refuge, Paul, we're not Greenpeace, we can't possibly take this sort of approach. I think you can. But you need to stand for something. You need to be prepared to speak up when the time is right, and you need to have a clear and authentic role for people to play in delivering on your vision. If you can stand for something, if you can speak up, and if your need for people to be part of your theory of change is real, then you can adopt this approach. I think this is the most important thing. When thinking about mobilization, you should be thinking model and not moment. You're moving to a mobilization model, not designing a campaign or creative moment. This needs senior buy-in. It needs to be recognized as a way of delivering your organization's strategy. It's change. It's not creative. There's creative in it. It's not campaign design. There are lots of campaigns in it. It's about fusing your values, your mission, and your goals with action and with response. How you speak really matters. So think back to the slide I showed you earlier on and think horizontal framing in all public-facing communications. We can only solve this problem working together. Here's how you can have impact. Use your values as a magnet. Your values are your magnet. Attract everyone who shares them. Go back to the Bernie Sanders slide when you get this presentation and think about how you can articulate your values, the values of your organization, in a similar way. And you need to be offering the people that you attract, the people that you mobilize, really authentic actions across the full spectrum of time, money, and voice. This is not a fundraising strategy. This is not a fundraising model. This is a mechanism by which you can bring the mass to bear for your organization in terms of the things that you need to achieve for a better society. So you really need to have clarity on what those time and voice or amplification asks are. And every organization I work with says they don't have them, but you do. You can workshop it and you will find them. And you need to be brilliant at the digital basics. A lot of this is digital. And let's face it, the world is not going to suddenly become less digital. So you need to be brilliant at the digital basics. And what does that mean? It means knowing what to focus on. It means improving the things that return most value in terms of action, campaigns, volunteering, or cash. It's about having access to the best digital talent. And it's really about building internal capacity. I say this to all of the people we work with. Building a high-performing in-house team has got to be your goal, because in-house will always be outsourcing elements of this to agencies and partners, people like me, doing myself out of the job. But in-house beats outsourcing. And a really, really important part of this is one team or radical collaboration. By radical collaboration or one team thinking, we mean shared goals, accountabilities, budgets, working practices, busting down those internal silos and making sure that you are speaking with consistency across all your communications to the public. And finally, a cheeky eighth thing, leadership. You need leadership. And I don't just mean your bosses, the senior team, or the chief executive. We can all lead. These strategies require leadership from all of us. Any form of change requires leadership at every level, and the change at your organization could start with you. If you like what we've been talking about today, share these slides with people at work. Talk about these ideas with your team. Critically talk to people outside of your team. Talk to the comms team. Talk to the digital team. Talk to the campaigns team. And if you can't change the strategy of your organization, find the projects to collaborate on with your colleagues to start in motion this level of thinking within your organization. Your organization will hit its goal quicker if it finds the way to harness the power and energy of everyone who wants what it is you are there to deliver. And I think it's time I stopped. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me today. And yeah, thank you.
Ok, gente. Prontinho. Paul, thanks for a great speech.
Thank you.
Bom, super legal, gente. Então, a gente achou que fazia muito sentido, né, passar esse vídeo. Para mim, ele faz uma costura muito legal, né? Enfim, né, entre o sentido do que a gente faz, o papel fundamental que a captação tem, mas sem deixar de colocar nesse contexto, né, que a gente não capta pela captação em si, mas a gente capta, quer trazer recursos para que a organização possa cumprir sua missão, possa transformar o mundo e também, claro, né, esse desafio da integração. I'm just talking a little bit about what I really found interesting, the role of the fundamental role of fundraisers, but also not to forget that we need to really remind ourselves that we don't fund just to get money, but we do it to really bring the change about in the world. So I'd like to begin with a question, Paul. Eu vou começar com uma pergunta, enquanto vocês vão colocando aí perguntas no chat, por favor. What are some kinds of difficulties you faced when you try to bring this more general and communications-based, campaigning-based approach? What are kind of some of the resistance, the pushback that you may find when you try to bring this new strategy? Eu estou perguntando para ele que tipo de desafio que ele já encontrou, que ele já ouviu, quando tentou implementar esse tipo de estratégia que ele exemplificou para a gente no vídeo.
Thank you. That is a really great question. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is getting agreement and alignment from all of the most senior, the senior team, that a mobilization approach will help the organization achieve its goal.
Ok, então primeiro, né, ele achou que é uma pergunta importante, primeiro grande desafio é conseguir realmente o alinhamento e a participação que todo mundo, principalmente da alta gerência, né, alta gestão, time sênior, concorde, né, em adotar essa estratégia mais de mobilização, de campanha.
We do our very, very best work when the organization has got the strategic objective of connecting with the public at a increased scale.
So, sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite get it.
So we do our best work when we work with organizations who at a senior level have already decided they need to increase their levels of scale with the public and attract more people.
Ok, então eles conseguem o melhor trabalho quando essa alta gestão já incorporou a ideia de precisar, né, aumentar a escala, trabalhar com campanha, trabalhar realmente, aumentar o impacto que eles querem gerar no mundo.
Yeah.
Okay. So, people, que mais, gente? Outras dúvidas que vocês gostariam de colocar? Seja da apresentação, seja também de outros pontos aí do Paul. Okay, so some people are asking if you could do a volunteer job or a pro bono work with them. Ele fez joinha, vamos ver, né? Quem sabe.
Is there
Okay.
a question from Rita about email and WhatsApp?
Sorry?
I think I can see a question from Rita about...
Okay. Maybe she just sent to you. I'm not seeing the question. I'll ask Rita, por favor, manda pergunta para mim ou no geral. But there's a good question here from Anna Reisky. She's saying that it's important, this part of bringing people by communicating our values. So could you talk a little bit more on how to do this values-based communication?
Yeah, I think the Bernie Sanders example I showed was a very good example of creating a short statement that really articulates who you are and what you stand for, and framing it as a question is also a useful tactic, and asking people to agree with something, because then you have a very early signal that you share the same values with that individual who's responding.
Então, exemplo, ele acha, viu, Ana, exemplo importante, por exemplo, aquele do Bernie Sanders, né, que ele mostrou. Então, uma comunicação curta que articula bem quem você é, né, o que você stand for, o que você acredita, como você se posiciona, e também uma dica legal que é colocar isso como uma pergunta, uma boa tática, porque pede para as pessoas concordarem. Ao concordar, já demonstra que compartilham esse valor com a organização.
And the process that we go through to find those that kind of framing or those calls to action is to bring as many people from around the organization together as possible, and spend an hour and a half just talking about the very simple articulations of our role and our vision, and trying to translate those kind of sentences into questions or things for people to agree with.
E aí o processo para chegar nisso, né, de como moldar, né, essa comunicação e esse call to action, né, essa chamada para uma ação, ele trazer o máximo possível de pessoas da organização, conversar sobre, então, como colocar as mensagens principais da organização de forma simples, traduzir o papel, traduzir a visão, as frases, ideias em questões.
And then a really important part of the process is to take your best 6 or 10 ideas and spend as small amount of money as possible to test them in Facebook, so that you can see what people think rather than what you and your colleagues think, sat in a room trying to guess what the public will respond to. So public response is better than workshop response.
Ok. E aí, depois que vocês tiverem, né, pega várias ideias, várias formulações, pegar 6, 10 ideias melhores, tentar gastar um pouquinho, o mínimo possível, para testar, por exemplo, no Facebook, ver o que mais apela às pessoas, o que mais ressoa, que isso funciona muito mais do que só tentar adivinhar a gente dentro da organização, dentro da sala. Eu acho que essa é a frase que mais vai falar com as pessoas. Testem, experimentem para descobrir o que realmente funciona. Thanks. Another question sobre o boletim. So Juliana is asking about a newsletter. if sending one every 2 months is it okay, or should we be more frequent, more regularly sent?
We are a great believer in frequent emails which only ever focus on one thing, and that every email we send should include the opportunity for the person who's receiving it to take some form of action, whether that be a high bar action of maybe giving money or turning up in real life, or a low bar action of maybe sharing some content online. But we think high frequency equals high engagement.
Ok. Então, Juliana, ele está falando que eles acreditam muito em comunicação frequente, mais frequente talvez do que uma a cada 2 meses, e que foque claramente em uma coisa, e mais do que isso, que dê oportunidade para quem recebe tomar alguma ação, né? Seja uma ação de alto nível, digamos assim, doar dinheiro, seja de mais baixo nível, de mais baixo engajamento, compartilhar alguma coisa online, mas, enfim, dar essa alta frequência, ele entende que aumenta o engajamento.
But we also, sorry, we also think that it's very important for charities and campaign groups to review their own data and monitor unsubscribe rates and click rates, because there is no one single approach that will fit all organizations.
Ok. E super importante isso, né? Que ele acha que não tem uma única solução, abordagem que funciona para qualquer organização, então é muito importante que a organização estude os próprios dados, né? Onde estão clicando mais, onde que o pessoal que está pedindo para sair da newsletter, então para ir testando e vendo o que funciona também. Tá? Very good. Carol asked the question, it's in English, I will translate it for everybody. E então, como é que é esse desafio de diferentes visões entre os stakeholders? Então, você pode chamar, né, os apoiadores individuais para tomar uma ação, serem vocais, né, fazerem barulho, mas, de repente, os apoiadores corporativos que estão engajados na missão, mas, de repente, querem, né, que pegue um pouco mais leve, não seja tão controversial. Did you see Carol's question about different stakeholders? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I think it can be a challenge if an organization hasn't done the work to be very clear about its values and to be very clear about how they will communicate their values, what they stand for, and what they stand against. Because if you haven't done that work, it's very difficult to be able to consistently communicate. And then, so the organization needs to be really comfortable with its position. And then I would suggest you have to then choose, if people are asking you to water down your position, whether they are the right partners for you. But I recognize that that is a difficult situation to deal with, but you need to stand for something.
Okay. É um desafio, sim, Carol, principalmente se a organização não fez o trabalho de ser clara sobre os seus valores, sobre como elas vão comunicar o que apoiam, o que não apoiam. Então, a organização precisa estar muito confortável nessa posição, e ele deixa a reflexão, que ele sabe que não é fácil, mas se alguns dos apoiadores estão talvez pedindo, né, para pegar mais leve, pensar se são os apoiadores certos para a sua organização. Sabe que isso é difícil, né? Muitas vezes a organização pode ter dificuldade de escolher e tal, de saber, né, como se sustentar, mas talvez, quem sabe, a médio e longo prazo precise achar formas de atrair os apoiadores que estão mais afim com a missão e com os valores. Nice. So there's another interesting question from Melissa, stating that there are organizations that they may have many projects or campaigns at the same time. So when you communicate, should the statement be from one campaign, one project, or the organization as a whole? How do you deal with different priorities and initiatives?
Again, it can be very difficult, but our goal when we're communicating, for example, with refuge who have that challenge, is that we communicate with one voice and that we don't try to complicate things through having lots of different segmentations. So there is no easy answer, but it is a question of being able to plan your content based on what you know is going to happen, and then having an agreed process for what you will do if something happens in the news which is considered by the group to be more important than the agreed program.
Ok, ele reconhece que isso pode ser difícil, Melissa, né? E aí ele usou como exemplo o próprio Refuge, que tem, né, muitas iniciativas diferentes, então vive esse desafio, mas uma coisa importante é ter uma voz só, né? Um tom, a forma de comunicar muito integrado, e aí tentar não complicar muito, segmentar muito o que fala, para quem fala. Então é importante planejar o conteúdo, né, muito sobre o que sabe que vai acontecer, o que vai ser feito, mas ter ao mesmo tempo uma certa flexibilidade, ter processo para ir lidando com esses pontos, né?
And we think it's quite a gradual process to do that, because that usually involves some leverage within an organization, which is why it's important for mobilization to succeed that it is a specific strategic objective of the organization so that people can align.
Ok. É um processo gradual e para a mobilização realmente ser bem sucedida, precisa realmente que todo mundo esteja bem alinhado, mesmo tendo cada projeto em si, mas uma comunicação mais geral, mais ampla. Legal. So there's a great question, a difficult question from Instituto Ação pela Paz. What tips can you give to small organizations that don't have like a dedicated communication team or even financial resources to really do big campaigns? What's the main ideas that even some very small organizations can achieve and do?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that I don't think that size of organization matters. The most important thing is ambition. And I think that I've worked with some very big organizations who cannot do this. And I've worked with some very, very small organizations who do it brilliantly.
Ok. Então, ele acha que o tamanho não importa tanto, ambição é muito importante, ter essa visão de onde quer chegar, inclusive porque ele já trabalhou com organizações grandes que acabaram não conseguindo implementar e pequenas que conseguem, né, usar a comunicação e essa abordagem de mobilização e campanha de forma brilhante.
But for small organizations who want to adopt this model, I think it's just really important that you think about how you can, through your existing digital communications, encourage people to sign up to your email list so that you can communicate frequently with people. And then it's important to think about the things that you ask people to do. And I've worked with charities and campaign groups who have tiny budgets who manage to make it happen. And like I say, I've worked with organizations with huge budgets where structure and team size actually gets in the way of telling the story that needs to be told.
E aí, como ele falou, então, né, mesmo pequenas organizações, usando as ferramentas, poucas ferramentas que elas têm, podem sempre fazer com que conseguir e-mails das pessoas, conseguir fazer com que elas assinem, né, um boletim, alguma coisa assim, e usando essa comunicação frequente, conseguem mobilizar as pessoas, né? Mesmo com orçamentos bem pequenos, é possível, sim, conseguir fazer isso. E, de novo, ele fala até que, às vezes, em organizações grandes, o tamanho da organização atrapalha, muitos departamentos, dificuldade de trabalhar junto, e nem sempre consegue implementar isso. Bom. Let's go. Many questions. Okay, so Deborah wants to know a little bit about how to set a target audience for any campaign. What kind of insights can you share? What kind of questions can we do at this moment? I know you talked a little bit about this in the video, but if you could explain a little bit more.
Yeah, especially for small organizations, I think it's more advantageous to think about the target action that you want people to take rather than think about the target audience, which is perfect for your ask. And I think that's important because if we are using Facebook, for example, the Facebook algorithm finds the people who will take the actions. So you don't need to think about target audience. And I think at the beginning, that's a very useful tactic to get scale.
Okay. Ele acha, continuando, né, pensando numa organização pequena, que é melhor pensar na ação-alvo que você quer que a campanha produza, né, do que no público-alvo perfeito, gastar muita energia, etc., para tentar achar o público-alvo perfeito. E ele dá o exemplo que usando o Facebook, se a mensagem estiver boa, estiver clara para a ação, o próprio algoritmo trabalha para achar as pessoas que estão mais propensas a fazer essa ação. Então, é uma tática legal isso para atingir escala, mesmo começando pequeno. Any other idea on what kind of questions are interesting to find a good target audience?
I honestly think that if you're an organization which has, and I don't know the channels which people use most in Brazil, but thinking about the UK, if you're a small organization who is active in Twitter and in Instagram, you will find people in those channels if you present very simple, we call them easy doors to walk through. So join the official record of support for trans youth is one of the examples I gave in the presentation. Or, you know, you believe, I don't know, another good example is creatively, but if you believe that Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, should lose his job. So really simple, easy steps to take for people to join your email list. I don't think size matters with that type of activity.
De novo, eu perguntei um pouquinho mais, né, de perguntas para achar a audiência perfeita, e ele reforçou mais, de novo, essa visão de que o foco mais na mensagem, uma mensagem simples, clara, engajante, tende a funcionar mais para engajar o tipo de pessoa certa, né? E eu vou emendar com a questão seguinte, que acho que tem a ver um pouco com isso. There's one question mentioning, you talk a lot about Facebook, and so is really Facebook the main one that you think organizations in the UK use, or also Instagram? We think that Instagram in Brazil is really useful, and also WhatsApp. A lot of communication is actually directly in phones and instant messaging.
Absolutely. So when we create a strategy with any organization in any country, we first need to do a study of where the public is in terms of the channels that they use, and then we would create strategies which focus on those channels. So in the UK, it's very much Facebook, but I read a lot about how Brazilian civil society is an expert at using WhatsApp, and it's something that I learned from how you use it. So I think it's really important to know where your audience is as step one.
Ok, então realmente quando eles criam a estratégia, né, quando vão trabalhar com uma nova organização, dependendo do país, estuda muito onde que o público está, que canais usam, e aí, claro, vai pensar estratégias nesses canais. No Reino Unido, né, na Inglaterra, o Facebook é muito importante, mas ele vê como organizações, por exemplo, no Brasil, usam muito o WhatsApp, ele até aprendeu um pouco sobre como usar o WhatsApp vendo as organizações daqui.
And I think the second thing to really think a lot about is how in the channels that your population are using, both using advertising, but also how can you create content which people will interact with and engage with, so that you can also generate interaction and engagement without having to pay for it. And that's a area which in the UK and the US, I think a lot of political parties are spending a lot of time thinking about how do they translate TikTok, for example, into action.
Ok. Então, e ele acha importante, quando está pensando nessas estratégias, essa combinação de duas abordagens, né? Não só, ele acha importante, né, anúncios pagos para gerar, né, para alcance maior, mas também como criar conteúdo que gere engajamento mesmo não precisando pagar, né? Ou seja, que as pessoas naturalmente vão retweetar, repostar, e aí você consegue esse engajamento sem precisar pagar. E ele deu exemplo que partidos políticos nos Estados Unidos, na Inglaterra, têm gastado muito, investido muitos recursos para aprender, por exemplo, como engajar com o TikTok, nessas novas redes sociais também. Ok, Thalita asked the question in English, I'll translate to Portuguese. Muito obrigado pela fala. Que ferramentas você recomenda para conseguir esse engajamento com as pessoas por e-mail? So, which kind of tools do you recommend to engage people by email?
Again, that's a really great question. Because we work with organizations with very small budgets and very big budgets, for us, the most important thing is that you have technology that matches your size. So for our small clients, it is perfectly okay to use MailChimp. We can get enough functionality out of MailChimp to work. And then as systems grow, then in the UK, there are several systems which you have to pay a lot of money for, which some of our clients will use. But naming them, I mean, Engaging Networks is a very good platform in the UK and US. I'm not sure if they're global, but I think the most important thing to realize it's more about how you scale your technology to match your size. You don't need to spend millions of dollars on technology to be able to do this.
Ok. Então, ele fala que essa é uma pergunta importante, mas que, de novo, precisa ser muito adaptada ao tamanho da organização, desde essa que tem um orçamento minúsculo a orçamentos muito grandes. Então, o importante é achar a tecnologia, o sistema, a plataforma que é compatível com o tamanho, né? Ele acha que para pequenas soluções como o MailChimp, que eu sei que tem aqui no Brasil, já bastam, já dá para fazer um trabalho muito legal. À medida que vai crescendo, claro, organizações grandes acabam usando sistemas pagos que podem chegar a custar muito. Ele deu o exemplo de eu não sei se alguém sabe se tem aqui no Brasil essa Engaging Network, ou se alguém tem até um link para quem estiver curioso. Então, ele deu esse exemplo de entre vários sistemas que os clientes deles usam. Mas o mais importante é como que você consegue essa escala da tech compatível com o tamanho e a maturidade da sua organização. Any other thing you'd like to add? No. Alana wanted to know a little bit about the other social media. Do you have any interesting example that people could look regarding TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, anyone that pops up to your mind?
Yes, I put the link in chat of a deck that I collect brilliant campaigns on, and people should bookmark it and use it because it's got some examples in there. But I see great examples where people use Twitter to grow their email list by by creating really impactful short threads and always ending them with a call to action. And there's an example of that in my deck. I've also seen great examples, which is also in the deck, of Greenpeace who've used LinkedIn and done great things in LinkedIn.
Nice. Ele colocou no chat aqui, né, um link, não sei, talvez alguns já tenham clicado, que tem vários exemplos, então, legais de como as organizações estão usando diferentes redes sociais. Ele deu exemplo de Twitter, de organizações que conseguem fazer fios, né, aqueles vários tweets, um em seguida do outro, conectados, e que sempre terminam com um call to action, com uma chamada para ação, para assinar, conseguir crescer sua lista de e-mails. Ele fala que tem um exemplo legal lá também do Greenpeace usando o LinkedIn de forma muito efetiva, então acho que é legal, porque vão ficar vários exemplos, e depois a gente compartilha esse chat com todo mundo, esse link com todo mundo também. So, okay, one more question. We're in our 10 final minutes, so maybe I'll try to ask 2-3 final questions, and we can try to wrap this up. And I don't know if Mariana also wants to maybe give a final short talk. Eu vou juntar um pouquinho agora algumas perguntas, gente, porque a gente está chegando no final do tempo. Vamos lá. Não sei se vai dar tempo da gente fazer todas as perguntas, qualquer coisa a gente tenta resgatar, manda para ele por e-mail e tenta pegar, tá? Eu vou priorizar um pouquinho, talvez, perguntas que ainda não foram feitas, assuntos que não foram tão cobertos. So, Mariana has an interesting question, Paul. When you're talking about the ideal digital team, what are you talking about? What kind of abilities and skills and profiles? What's a good digital team for a social organization?
Again, it depends on where you are in terms of your size and scale, but I think I'll describe the perfect team with the understanding that I recognize that not every organization can have that many people. Do you want to translate that first?
Yeah, sure. Ele, claro, vai depender muito do tamanho, da escala, do tipo de organização, mas ele vai falar do time perfeito, ideal, sabendo que, claro, nem toda organização vai conseguir ter tantas pessoas em sua equipe.
I'm actually going to find you a graphic and share it, if that's okay, because I think it'll be
sure.
Easier if I can find it quickly enough.
Okay.
I will. It will be a good thing to show you. I've nearly got it, so bear with me just for a little bit longer.
Yeah, no problem. Ele, na verdade, lembrou de um gráfico, um esquema que ele vai mostrar para a gente, para mostrar, ele acha que vai ser melhor para entender.
I think I can share my screen.
Yeah.
So hopefully, this is something that if I can find it, I will be able to show you it. Oh, it's so, here we go.
Oh, nice.
So this is what we think are the key roles in a digital team. So you would have a head of digital, and then all of the different skills that are shown on screen make the perfect team, but we recognize that we don't live in a perfect world. But you need somebody. Do you want to translate that first?
Yeah, então esse seria de novo, né, o time perfeito, ainda sabendo, claro, que nem todo mundo consegue, mas mostra aí esses diferentes papéis e habilidades que deveria ter.
So there's a full range of skills from social media to an email specialist to advertising specialists, both in terms of social media and search, and also somebody to look after the website on the first line. And then on the second line, technical skills, design skills, content skills, video skills, and analytics skills.
Ok, então ele está mostrando que tem desde, claro, o pessoal especializado em diferentes mídias sociais, em e-mail, em comunicação, né, e propaganda mais pensando no meio social, propaganda pensando também, né, em pesquisa na internet, pensando no site e na especialização do site, do SEO, né, daquele otimizar, mas também esses outros capacidades técnicas, criação de conteúdo, vídeo, produção, então, enfim, é bastante coisa, bastante desafiador, né? Nice.
However, I do know that some of my clients have 2 people.
Okay.
And they work with either great partners or they prioritize away from the things that they don't have the skills for. But having a plan is the most important thing.
Ok. Mas ele sabe, né, que muita gente não consegue ter esse time inteiro, então ele fala que já dá para fazer muita coisa legal, por exemplo, tendo 2 pessoas na equipe, e aí priorizando as áreas que fazem mais sentido para a organização, ou trabalhando também com parceiros fornecedores. Ok. Nice. Maybe last question. Yeah, I'll make 2 questions here, if you can address really quickly. Celebrities, are they good for the engagement? Influencers or celebrities, should you use them for your communication? And also paid ads, if it really helped, or I'd like to know your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Influencers, I think, can be really important. As your program grows, you need to expand it into all areas of digital, and relationships with digital influencers will help you get your message in front of more people.
Ok, então ele acha sim que influencers, celebridades podem sim ser muito importantes, principalmente pensando que eles podem ajudar no crescimento, ajuda a amplificar a mensagem da sua organização.
And when it comes to digital advertising or paid media, I think it's an unfortunate reality that we only really get reach and engagement in social media platforms if we have some advertising budget. So I would always recommend to a client that they spend something in those spaces, even if it's perceived to be small. You will get better reach by spending money well than just trying to rely on organic content.
Ok. Ele acha que conteúdo pago, né, propaganda paga é uma realidade, infelizmente. Algum orçamento para isso é importante, mesmo que pareça pequeno, e aí é importante gastar bem esse conteúdo, mas geralmente vai ter mais resultado do que só esperar, né, conteúdo orgânico, então a combinação das 2 coisas parece realmente ser importante. Well, Paul, I think we're almost out of time, so thank you very much for being with us. I don't know if you have a last anything you want to say. I saw that you already shared your Instagram. Is there any other way people could reach you, or maybe Rela's website that you'd like to share?
Yeah, Twitter is a very good place to find me. Just my name, Paul de Gregorio, is my Twitter handle. I would love to connect with people in Twitter and anywhere else. But most importantly, I'd just like to say thank you. I love doing global communications like this and meeting new people. And I can tell just by your Zoom profiles that you are wonderful, wonderful mobilizers. So I wish you all the luck.
Então, o Paul terminou super agradecendo, compartilhou o Twitter dele, agradeceu muito a oportunidade, que ele adora fazer essas conversas mais globais, e que deu para perceber pelas perguntas, pelo engajamento também, que todos aqui parecem ser ótimos mobilizadores e comunicadores. Mariana, uma palavrinha final pela Resource Aliance?
Quero agradecer super o Paul, foi maravilhoso, Paul, estar aqui com você. It was wonderful having you here, Paul. Thank you for joining us. Agradecer a ABCR e, enfim, tem muita coisa para a gente fazer junto ainda. Obrigada a todo mundo, estou muito feliz que vocês curtiram. E, enfim, se vocês quiserem falar comigo sobre o IFC ou sobre outras programações que a Resource Aliance organiza, eu estou aqui, vou colocar meu nome completo no chat, vocês podem me encontrar no LinkedIn. E é isso. A gente vai se falando, a gente se mantém em contato.
Legal, gente. Agradeço também. Thanks, Paul, once again. Obrigado, Mariana, também pela parceria. Obrigado a todo mundo que ficou aí até o final. Fiquei super contente, estamos super contentes. Obrigado a toda a equipe que viabilizou isso também, Gi, Gabriele, Daniel, super valeu. E até mais, gente. Nos vemos daqui a poucas semanas no Festival ABCR. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye.